TNA Wrestling crossed the line again with another live taping at Full Sail University. And my goodness me, did they deliver on shocks, surprises, and an entertaining show that we'll get into. We'll recap it. It's not going to be your usual long podcast today. We're going to talk about several things that happened during the show on TNA as we move forward to, I think, sacrifices coming up and some matches have been made for that. But my God, last night we had it all: debuts, shocking debuts, NXT crossovers, all that, and so much great action on TNA this week. And before we even get to that, we've even got to mention the fact that Moose showed up on NXT this past Tuesday. I interviewed him on Monday night. Tuesday night, he's down on NXT. He got the turnbuckle rub. That's for sure. Just joking about that, really. But Moose shows up on NXT. He has a bit of a to do with Obafembi. More on that in a minute. He also, Lexus King has also challenged him for the X Division Championship this coming Tuesday on NXT, which will also feature Matt and Jeff Hardy on the show against the No Quarter Catch crew for the towing. I think the NXT Tag Team titles are on the line as well, which will be fantastic. But let's get into some of the stuff that happened on TNA Impact this week. It all started with the Joe Hendry encore concert. If you remember, the concert he had a couple of weeks ago was interrupted by Jake Something, which set up a match that Joe Hendry wound up winning last week, or the week before. Side note on Jake, something that he has set up a GoFundMe to help him out while he recovers and pays for some of his injuries and surgeries that he's had. We wish him well, and the GoFundMe is available. As is still Chris Bays, I think he's still around. I think you can still donate, or you can go and buy one of his merch shops, shirts on the shop, on the TNA shop. Go and do that as well and support Chris Bay. Joe Hendry was talking on his convoy, doing a song about being in the Royal Rumble. He would have won it if it wasn't for Roman. Talks about Sheamus. In a roundabout way, he also challenged John Cena on this. And then, in a massive surprise, and I've been watching these guys down in NWA, the Colognes, Primo and Epico, debut on TNA Wrestling. So Primo and Epico from the NWA to the Impact Zone in Forsyth University, they come out and they start to run down Joe Hendry and are going to start a 2-on-1 assault on Joe Hendry. And as typical as when big surprises happen in wrestling, out go the lights and the strum of the guitar sent Full Sail University into meltdown as the artist formerly known as Elijah debuted on TNA Wrestling and has signed with TNA Wrestling. Now, the thing from there is, was he going to side with Joe Hendry or was he going to side with the Colognes? Well, he did indeed side with Joe Hendry. He believes in Joe Hendry, and him and Joe Hendry cleaned house, but it set up the main event, which was going to be Joe Hendry and Elijah versus the Colognes in the main event. So two massive shots to kick start TNA this week. It was incredible. Looking forward to seeing that in the main event, and we'll give you that in a bit more later on. Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel did defeat Tyriek and Tyson from NXT with Wes Lee there. Well, that was a really good match, by the way. You need to see that. It was awesome. Wes Lee got on the microphone after that and challenged them to a six-man tag, including Ace Austin to the ring because Ace Austin got involved in the match a bit earlier on when it was starting to gang up on the Rascalz. So The six-man tag, I think, is next week. It is going to be Wes Lee, Tyriek, and Tyson versus the Rascalz and Ace Austin. So keep an eye on that next week on Impact. Should be good fun. Now, we had the debut episode of the First Class Penthouse with AJ Francis, with KC Navarro, of course. He was bringing out TikTok sensations and all of this stuff. And then the daughter of the hardcore legend Mick Foley, Noelle Foley, was brought out by AJ Francis. This was incredible. And he then said to pull out your phones and go live in case TNA cuts the feed of what they're about to do. He was talking about the reality of wrestling and Zillifar 2 and Booker T. And then he says, I'm going to introduce to you the first guest on this. And some might say he's phenomenal. Some might say he has a lot of style. He said, here he's in welcome, the one, the only, AJ Francis. And it was him. He got a bit confused with the wording at the end of the promo. He did say that, AJ left AJ left TNA to make money over there, and he's going, and Wales, he left money to save TNA, and he got it a little bit arse about face, but nevertheless, there was that, and it happened, and he fooled us. AJ Francis fooled us. We thought we was going to bring out AJ damn Styles for a minute on TNA television, which would have blew the place up even more. But he done us very well on that one. Kudos to AJ Francis on that. Knockout action saw Lei Ying Lee. Jesus, TNA never give me her to interview. Not that I wouldn't want to, but I'll just be embarrassing. She beat Rosemary this week in a good knockouts contest. It wasn't the end though, because at the end of that match, as Lei Ying Lee was walking up the ramp, Rosemary turned her around and blew mist in her face. So obviously not finished between the two. Be interesting to see what happens with that. We don't see Lei Ying Lee very often. She's not like a regular on the Knockouts division yet. I'm hoping that this is the start of her coming on to TNA more predominantly week in, week out, because she is definitely a talent that needs to be there for sure on TNA. And again, it gives Masha Slamovich another problem, although she's got a few problems, and we'll get into that in a minute. There was Death Machine TB with Callahan. He was going crazy. He was on a hunt for Mace Warner, and he ended up finding him. He hit Warner with the camera. The feed cuts out, and crazy stuff was going on. That has set up a street fight for next week on TNA. Menace Warner and Callahan are going to go crazy. I don't know if it's street fight for next week or whether that's at Sacrifice, actually. I could be wrong. I'll get to it on my notes on the other page of my phone in a minute. But a crazy, crazy brawl between Menace Warner and Sami Callahan. God knows what's going to happen between those two. Now, Tessa Blanchard. Now, if you remember last week, Santina Marella mentioned that Tessa would have to compete this week. Well, she was backstage bullying a doctor as a doctor was attending to Lei Ying Lee. Fucking hell, guys. Jesus. Anyway, the doctor was making it clear Tessa was coming in like, I need some thingy, I need some support. I'm her. And doctor was like, I'm tending to Lee. She was like, ignore the mid-card talent for a minute or so. Because she needs support. I mean, mid-card Tessa. Jeez. She comes out in a bit, and let me tell you, it goes crazy. But before that, Eric Young and the Northern Armory, they come out for a promo. They cut a promo, basically saying, they did what they had to do last week. They sent Alexander packing, and he basically said that Eric Young would become the next TNA champion. He's got a long list of people in front of him, does Mr. EY himself. The fans were giving him the what treatment, cheering it. But then he said, Macklin should be here. He said Macklin has a hard time trusting people. He did say that Macklin trusts him. Now, Steve Macklin had very much a career at Full Sail University on NXT, which is, very well documented, and he got a great response. He looked. But anyway, he says that Macklin knew about Alexander and he actually warned him about Alexander. He did say maybe he did it for him or maybe he did it for Macklin. And then he come up with this business isn't right or wrong, not black or white, it's red. Red blood, red. And that was the end and what goes on. So we need to see what's going on with the Macklin, Eric Young, Northern Armory issue. Would that still be going on? We don't know. But an issue that we do know that's carried on is Mustafa Ali and Mike Santana. Now, Mustafa Ali had an AA meeting of sorts, and there was lots of people there, sharing stuff when Ali walked in. So Mike Santana was sitting there along with some other talents, and they were sharing. Ali took a seat, gave a big speech about how everyone in the room conquered their addictions. And after he wraps up, everybody claps. And then he leans into Mike's ear and says, "But people can change, or things can change, but people like you don't." Wow. I mean, that's powerful. That is really powerful because if you know the history of what Santana has overcome, for Mustafa Ali to say those words is massive. It's huge, and people may not understand it, but if you know the story of Santana, you'll understand how those words have a massive effect on him. He's gonna go crazy about that, and Ali's in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I think he's picking a fight with the wrong man. We will see. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Now, Moose on this show, on the Hitting a Turnbuckle interview with Moose, you can see it if you go to the playlist, go to the special guest playlist. Moose will be there. He said that the system were going to kick Leon Slater's ass. Well, the majority is actually true. Leon and JDC had a fantastic no DQ match. Leon was doing his sent on splashes off the top rope and whatnot. Ultimately, as it being a no disqualification match, the numbers game did indeed catch up with Leon and the system of including Moose. It did take Moose as well. Myers and Edwards on the outside. Alicia was on the outside as well. But they all did indeed cost Leon Slater the match. It basically was a huge choke slam onto a table on the floor. They rolled Leon back in, and then the 1, 2, 3. And as the match ends, the physical part does not. Moose then joined them in the ring, and as a post-match beatdown, excuse me, was happening, out come Matt and Jeff Hardy to stand by the man that teamed up with them last week. And then those three were basically also the numbers game was outgoing Matt, Jeff, and Leon. The crowd were chanting for it. Oba, Oba, Oba. They didn't disappoint. Out comes Oba Femi, the NXT champion, comes out. Place goes bananas about this, and they have the system backs off at this point. But when they do walk to the back, Santina Marella makes a match for the system next week. It is Moose, Edwards, and Myers against the Hardys and Obafembi. Next week is going to be a 6-man tag for the ages on NXT. Check that out on the TNA Plus app. Get it downloaded, get subscribed, and you will not miss a second of the action on TNA Impact. Now, we did mention earlier on Tessa Blanchard was with a doctor. Now, she come out and, she was in her street clothes. She weren't ready to wrestling to compete. She said she mentioned her interactions with a doctor and that she's not medically cleared. The crowd, by the way, on this is the heat on this girl is incredible. She has got nuclear heat from her past stuff outside of the ring, and there was certain chants going on in there, and an incredible, the heat magnet that she really is. I mean, she's a great wrestler. Don't get me wrong, but she is a heat magnet for her past stuff, which you can all check out. But anyway, After getting drowned out by the crowd, and then she started to talk again, out comes Santino, and he's pissed. And he said that he didn't think Tessa could be a bigger weasel than what she is, and he's given her another ultimatum. And that ultimatum is you either wrestle next week on TNA or you're fired. We'll see if Tessa Blanchard comes out next week on there. But someone that was wrestling this week was Masha Slamovich. She did indeed defeat Maya Moore. Interestingly enough, on this match, Cora Jade comes out at the end, sneaks attack Masha Slamovich. And as Cora walks back up the ramp, she stares face to face with Tessa Blanchard. Interesting times. But Santina Morella also announces some matches for Sacrifice. Masha Slamovich will be defending the Knockouts Championship against NXT's Cora Jade at Sacrifice in just a few short weeks' time. They also announced Spitfire against the Elegances for the Knockouts Championships, and I think that's next week, actually, with a special concierge stipulation, which we don't know what it is. But in the main event, Joe Hendry and Elijah did indeed defeat the Colognes. The crowd was seeing walk with Elijah. The power driver from Elijah picked up the victory. And an incredible, tag team match. Who would have thought it this week on TNA? They absolutely knocked another home run out the park and the sold out Full Sail University. They're going to have another live show in May, I believe, in a few short months' time. There may be one or two before that. I don't know. But an incredible TNA wrestling show this week. And I was actually wrong. The Mance Warner and Sami Callihan one-on-one matches next week. I heard somewhere about a street fight. Maybe that's a match that they've announced for later on. But anyway, next week, TNA Wrestling, Obafembi and the Hardys against the Moose, Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards. Then Warner, Sami Callihan. Tessa Blanchard has to wrestle while she's fired. And Frankie Kazarian goes one-on-one with Ace Austin. Wow. What a TNA wrestling last night. Was fantastic to see. Guys, go and get it. TNA Plus app. Get it downloaded. Get subscribed. Get on it. You are missing out on some historic moments on TNA with so much more historic moments to go and to come in the coming weeks and months. Get it downloaded. Get subscribed. Watch TNA. And of course, watch us at HTT Buckle on X, HTT Buckle on YouTube, Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast on all other social media platforms. We will be back with a roundup of TNA next week as they continue at Full Sail University. And until then, everybody, cross the line and stay safe.